I'm 76 years old, and there is something I did for most of my life that I thought was harmless. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken, and now I know that silence can wound deeper than anger ever did. I'm not telling this because I need forgiveness or understanding. I'm telling it because I don't have much time left, and some things feel heavier when they go unspoken this long. If someone younger is listening, maybe they'll recognize themselves in my quiet. Maybe they won't. Either way, this feels like the last honest thing I can give. These days, my mornings are slow. I sit at the kitchen table long after my coffee goes cold. The house makes sounds I don't remember it making before. Small clicks, pipes shifting, wind against the window. It's quieter than it used to be, even when the radio is on. Quiet has followed me into old age like an old habit that never learned how to leave. When you get this old, you start measuring time differently, not by years, but by what's already gone. People, chances, conversations that will never happen now. I don't think about death every day, but I think about endings, and I think about what I didn't say before those endings arrived. For a long time, I believed that staying silent was a kind of kindness. I told myself I was avoiding conflict, that I was being patient, that words once spoken couldn't be taken back, so it was better to keep them inside. No one ever warned me that unspoken words don't disappear. They settle, they harden, they change the shape of relationships without making a sound. I didn't grow up in a house where people talked things through. My father believed emotions were private, almost shameful. My mother managed the peace by letting things pass. Arguments ended not with resolution, but with quiet meals and closed doors. So I learned early that silence meant survival. If you didn't speak, you didn't make things worse. If you didn't speak, you didn't risk being misunderstood. That lesson stayed with me when I left home in my early 20s. I got a job that paid the bills. I married a woman who was warm, expressive, and far more emotionally fluent than I was. I admired that about her, even as it intimidated me. In the beginning, my quiet seemed like steadiness. I listened, I nodded, I didn't raise my voice. She used to say I made her feel safe. I took pride in that. When disagreements came up, and they always do, I stayed calm, or at least I looked calm. Inside, things piled up, small frustrations, needs I couldn't quite name, feelings I didn't know how to explain without sounding foolish. So I said nothing. It felt reasonable at the time. I told myself I was choosing peace. I told myself it wasn't important enough to bring up. I assumed there would be another moment later, a better moment, when I'd find the right words. Later always felt closer than it really was. Life filled in the space. Work got busier. We had children. There were schedules, bills, responsibilities that demanded attention. Silence slipped easily between them, unnoticed. There were moments I remember clearly now. Sitting in the car after an argument that never quite happened. Standing in the doorway while she washed dishes, wanting to say something and deciding it could wait. Hearing a tone in her voice that told me she was hurt and answering with practicality instead of honesty. I didn't think I was causing harm. I thought I was preventing it. Over time, my silence changed how she spoke to me. She stopped asking certain questions. She filled in my quiet with her own conclusions. Sometimes she filled it with anger, other times with distance. I noticed it, but I didn't name it. Naming things would have required words, and words were what I avoided. When the children were young, they came to me less with their feelings and more with problems they wanted fixed. I was good at fixing things. I could replace a broken hinge, help with homework, show up on time. But when they were confused or hurt or angry in ways that didn't have clear solutions, they went to their mother. I told myself that was natural, that she was better at those things. I didn't ask what it meant that they rarely came to me just to talk. Years passed that way, quietly. No single disaster, no dramatic rupture, just a steady thinning of connection, like fabric wearing down thread by thread. There were nights my wife tried to tell me she felt alone. I remember the look on her face more than the words. Tired, careful, as if she was choosing each sentence to avoid pushing me away. I answered with reassurance instead of vulnerability. I told her everything was fine, that we were okay, that she worried too much. What I didn't say was that I felt lost too, that I didn't know how to reach her anymore, that I was afraid if I opened my mouth, nothing useful would come out. Silence felt safer than saying the wrong thing, but silence has its own weight. It presses down slowly. It teaches the people around you to stop expecting more. The turning point didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came quietly, the way everything important in my life seems to have arrived. She got sick in her early 60s. Nothing sudden at first. Appointments, tests, long afternoons in waiting rooms that smelled like disinfectant and old magazines. Illness has a way of stripping things down. There's less room for pretending, less time for later. She asked me one afternoon while we were sitting side by side if I was ever angry with her. The question surprised me. I said no. I meant it, in the shallow way people often mean things. She nodded, but her eyes told me she didn't believe me. Or worse, that she believed my answer meant I had never cared enough to be angry at all. That night, I lay awake thinking about everything I had never said, all the moments I'd swallowed words because they felt inconvenient or uncomfortable. I told myself I would talk to her in the morning, that I would finally explain myself. Morning came. Something else demanded attention. The moment slipped away. She died 2 years later. At the end, there were still things she didn't know about me, not secrets in the dramatic sense, just feelings, questions, confessions that would have made us closer if I'd had the courage to speak them. I held her hand. I told her I loved her. That part I said out loud. What I didn't say was how sorry I was for all the quiet. How I now understood that my silence had left her alone with her thoughts far too often. How I wished I had risked being clumsy with words instead of absent with them. After the funeral, people told me I was strong. They said I handled it well. I nodded like I always had. Grief doesn't always look like crying. Sometimes it looks like realizing the conversation is over forever. I tried to be more open after that. With my children, who were grown by then, I called more often, asked questions I should have asked years earlier. They were polite, kind, but there was a distance I couldn't cross. They had built their lives without expecting emotional presence from me. I couldn't blame them for not rearranging things now. Silence, once it does its work, leaves marks that don't fade easily. Now I sit in this quiet house and replay moments that felt small when they happened. Times I chose not to speak because it seemed easier, because it felt safer, because I assumed time would keep stretching out in front of me. Time doesn't stretch, it closes. If you're listening to this, I won't tell you what to do. I don't trust advice much anymore, but I can tell you what I wish I had understood. Anger, when spoken honestly, can be repaired. Words can be clarified. Apologies can be offered. Silence doesn't give that chance. Silence lets other people write the story for you. When you don't speak, people don't hear patience. They hear indifference. They hear absence. They hear a door quietly closing. You don't have to be eloquent. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to be seen, even when it feels uncomfortable. I thought keeping things inside made me steady. What it really did was make me distant. I don't have many years left now. I know that. I feel it in my body, in the way days blur together. I've made some peace with that. What I haven't made peace with is how many conversations ended before they ever truly began. If this meant something to you, you don't need to do anything about it right away. Just notice the quiet in your own life. Notice what you keep inside because it feels easier. Some silences protect, many do not. I'm 76, and I learned this too late. And all I can do now is say it out loud once before I run out of chances to speak at all.